All right, welcome to early college planning night. My name is Mr. Summer. I think I've had most people's kids here either in eighth grade as their counselor or I've um, been around them in the middle school. I am the supervisor of school counseling here at Randolph High School. With me tonight is our Argyris Leftheriou. He is a counselor up at the high school. We're trying to deliver this virtually just to see if this is a better option for some families, especially because this is a week where some families might be traveling, so we just want to be able to get the information out there. Early college planning is really, we're trying to target what the ninth and the 10th graders should be doing during this time to prepare. I am currently in New York City at the College Board. It's a forum this year where we're discussing a lot of things about how to prepare our students for college. There's a lot of anxiety for both parents and students on the with the process. So what we're hoping to do is be able to get information out that will assist families in learning how to navigate as we move through high school and then eventually into the application process junior and senior year. So we're going to get it kicked off. First, it's important to understand what the counseling office is here for. We see students for a myriad of different things. It could be social, could be something that is going on at school, whether that is with a teacher or their best friend or another group of students. It could be emotional. Maybe they have something going on at home, or it could be at a job, a sports team, whatever is occurring. And then there's obviously academic. If they're having any type of challenges, we try to hook them up with different supports. At the high school, we're really lucky to have open lunch, and students are able to see their teachers for extra help and office hours. Just as a quick introduction, there are different members of our counseling team. So there is myself, Miss Berkeley, Jess Averill. Right now, we have a long-term sub. Her name is Marcy Craver. She has a ton of experience, and she's a wonderful addition to our team during this time. Erin O'Neill, Narissa Svetvilis, Brianna Piccolo. Currently, Taryn Rexowski is covering for her. And then Mr. Leftheriou, who's with us today. He's also a soccer coach, so he may have also spent time with your kids, even if they're not on his caseload. When we're transitioning to high school, there's a lot of new stresses that could be involved. So some of the things that we suggest to help manage those stresses is that students are beginning to use a planner. In the middle school, they may have still had a paper planner or started using something electronically. There are a lot of apps out there. Finch is one that some of our students have been utilizing. They seem to really like it because it almost makes accomplishing tasks a little bit of a game. But anything that works for them is really going to be important. Again, during open lunch, students can get extra help. That's a really great time for them to start utilizing things like the library, which is a great place to study. We have some quiet areas within the library if it's a little noisy that they can go to. There's different study groups that occur throughout the day. The teachers, NHS tutors, those are all things that we can help with if a student needs to be connected to something. One of the biggest anxieties over college admissions is that we're asking young students to start to make decisions about what they want to do for the rest of their life. And that can be really difficult to do, right? In eighth grade, some students might have decided that they were going to apply to the academy programs that's over at Votech. That's a big decision for an eighth grader to decide what they want to do for the next 4 years of life, right? It goes hand in hand with what high schoolers are going to have to do and make decisions on when they go to college. So it's important for us to focus on the right things. We oftentimes tell parents to sort of schedule times to talk about the future because students and parents could be sometimes combative, right? I have a daughter. If I try to ask her how school goes, oftentimes I'm met with, it was fine. We didn't do anything, and so if I ask too much, it's almost counterproductive, right? So listening to your child is important, and gauging how often to have these discussions is also important, so you don't get a lot of pushback from them. You really want to be a guide to them. You want to start talking to them about your life choices or other people's that you've encountered life choices so that they can kind of see different pathways. And we want to start talking to students not not necessarily only about college, but any secondary pathway, right? So whether that's going to be trade school, a 2-year school, a 4-year school, I could tell you from my own experience, I wasn't ready for a 4-year school, so I went to a community college and then transferred to a 4-year school. So everybody's pathway is going to be different. I think it's important that, we allow our students to see the different options, but they should all understand that it's necessary to receive some type of secondary training as they move on, right? I do a presentation, and the first thing I do when we walk in, usually with sophomores, is to say, what is it that you want to be when you grow up? In kindergarten, when you ask that question, every student's hand flies up in the air. They want to be an astronaut, a dentist, a doctor, a police officer, a firefighter. They all know what they want to be. And then as time goes on, the realities of different things start to set in, and students can start to maybe lose focus or are unclear about what they want. So it's important to give them good exposure to the different things, and we will handle some of that programming ourselves. Again, the 10th graders are going to receive a presentation and do some group work with the counselors on career exploration, and kind of like finding their fit. You'll hear us say that a few times tonight. It's what is good for them, right? Not necessarily what's good for all the other people. It's what is the good fit for your student, for your child. So in ninth grade and 10th grade, we're going to start with ninth grade. What we're really talking about is we want to get students to be involved, right? They're going to begin to build their resume. Um, we want them to try new things. We have a ton of clubs. We'll get to a slide on that in a little bit, but that's really the name of the game. We need the students to start to have experiences that shape not only the pathway that they want to go down, but start to shape how other people see them. So this is a good example is a transcript or like an application that has a resume attached to it. You're painting a picture that you want other people to see. Basically, people are going to make decisions about your student based off of a list. Could be their GPA, could be the sports that they did, clubs, activities, right? And so we really want to start talking to our students about getting involved so that those pieces of paper that followed them are going to paint the picture that they want others to see. Mister, you want to take a few? You're muted.
I think I was muted there. So thank you, Mr. Summer. Just a reminder, the Q&A is open. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to drop it in the Q&A section, and we'll make sure that we address that. But yeah, so your digital footprint for your student is super important, right? I mean, we're not going to say that admissions officers in college are going to be doing a whole background check on every single student that applies. There's schools that get applications in the hundreds of thousands. They're not going to sift through each one. But with that being said, I have heard horror stories of admissions officers telling me that one Google search ended the student's chances. So you just want to be cautious, and you want to talk with your teenager about what they're posting online, how it can be viewed or misconstrued by others, and the trail that it leaves behind, the digital footprint, right? So like the internet is forever. Stuff does not go away. Old accounts, even that they think they use under a different name or whatever the case may be, you don't want that popping up. And it can affect the reputation and how others see them. So whether that be a recommender or a college or a coach, an employer that does a search on them, they might see something that's unsavory, and that could, it could change the way that they're viewed by that person. So just a conversation piece to have with your student. Um, and yeah, so like some admissions officers, they're not exactly spying on students, but they want to assess the character of the student if they're on the fence about something, or maybe there's a question mark about one of their extracurricular activities. They might look for further context or verification. Uh, that's pretty much it. You want to do the opposite, right? So not only talking about deleting stuff or going back and making sure that there's nothing on there that leaves a digital footprint, you want to then create a positive footprint. So use when they do create that positive online footprint, you want to make sure they use their real name so they're easy to find, and highlight, positive achievements, clubs, sports, activities, trophies. Maybe they submitted some sort of art piece to a gallery. Maybe they did a research project with the teacher, something that can be easily found. And then if an admissions officer does go looking, or whether it be a future employer, there's at least something positive there to be found.
Just to add on to that, Mr. E also acts as our HIB specialist at the school. So one thing that we see a lot is when students are making posts, we suggest that they think about, is that post kind and is that post necessary, right? There's going to be times when it would be funny maybe to comment on something that someone else did or post a photo of a student sleeping, but we wind up being attached to those things. So whether you're tagged in it or you tag someone else, um, it, it becomes connected to you, right? And we would not want for someone to do a search and find a post like that on that a student has created and it affect them negatively. So it's just something to think about.
And it's not only about just what admissions officers see, right? So if you have, for example, a student that has a friend and they have a falling out, they might have a folder full of screenshots of something that they said in jest in the past, and then they might use that to send to a college and show the college that that this is not a good pick for your school. So that actually happens more often than admissions officers going in and literally Googling and spying on kids. It's more like one kid has something over the other. They're annoyed because this kid got into school, this XYZ school over them. They want to get back at them. They held a grudge from ninth grade, eighth grade even, and they want to send something out to the admissions department of that school. You never know. So it's just best to be on the cautious side and make sure you're not actually posting any of that stuff. And this is a timeline that I had created a few years back. The only thing that you'll see a little bit different there is now the PSAT is taken in the fall. So at Randolph High School this year, you might have noticed your ninth, 10th, and 11th graders all took the PSAT. So that's a good baseline for students to kind of feel out where they're going to be for future testing. So that's already happened this fall of freshman year. So you could take that box off. The rest of freshman year, really, guys, is like just doing the work, right? You want to take courses that are challenging to you. You want to do well in those courses. You want to build a good foundation. So starting your GPA from ninth grade is important. You'll always hear about 11th grade being the most important grade throughout high school. And there's some truth to that, but really every single class is weighed equally into a GPA, whether that be ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and beyond. The only thing that is additional would be for honors courses and AP courses. Um, but yeah, starting from ninth grade and building that foundation and building the best possible GPA you can is going to be the most important thing. Another thing that we do is we make sure every student has an active SCORE account. We'll get into SCORE a little bit in the future. Specifically in this presentation, we're going to talk about how to get you connected onto SCORE, to have a parent account. So that's something that you can also start to do in the fall. And then as we progress throughout freshman year, you'll be looking at some assessments on SCORE, meeting your counselor, continuing to challenge yourself, and then really the big one, other than building a good GPA, is getting involved. It's super important to have a club, an activity, a sport, something that you are connected to for multiple years. And the only way to do that is to start from freshman or sophomore year.
So when we talk a little bit about building your resume, someone had asked us, and it was very timely actually because we're getting into that. What we really want to see is that the students are going to pick something like Mr. E said that they kind of stick with. So it's important to try new things for sure. But what a college really wants to see is that a student has been dedicated to something at some point. So quality becomes more important than quantity, right? So in freshman year, if you have a couple different interests, you should definitely try out different things. And at some point, you want to figure out where you fit in the fold and then dedicate some time to that. Try to get a leadership position. So different clubs like FBLA. We put a few clubs up here. There is a ton of clubs that are available through our website. You could see more. And when we send out the information, that is actually an active link that will be attached to this presentation. But things like we have Dungeons and Dragons, we have Drama Club, Key Club does a ton of stuff as far as community service is concerned. Colleges really like to see people helping people, not just colleges either. Almost every single scholarship that I have seen is going to ask you what you have done for your community, right? So being able to have experiences, whether it's through sports, the scouts, it could be any other affiliation that you have with a community organization, whether that's a religious affiliation or something else, it doesn't matter. If they're doing things that's giving back to the community, colleges and scholarships really like to see that, right? And it's a great resume builder. So I can give you a really good example. Mr. E and I previously worked in a different district together. There was a young man who couldn't find anything that he liked as far as community service was concerned. So what he decided to do was go to Panera, and every night when they were getting ready to get rid of their bread for the day, he would pick it up and bring it over to the local homeless shelter that was down in Somerset, New Jersey. So that student actually was able to talk about how he took a leadership role in planning that, connecting with different people, and then assisting his community. And that looked really, really great. I'm not saying that every student needs to do an off the cuff thing. It's just nice when they see that you're invested in your community, right? And so these are the different ways to do that. We have a lot of sports, we have a lot of clubs. I encourage you, if you have outside organizations that you're already to participate in, that's a great thing. You can continue to do that.
And I mentioned a little bit before about the perceived importance of junior year. A lot of that importance comes from the fact that it is the last grade on a student's transcript that has final grades, I should say, before they apply to college. So a lot of students don't even realize that. They think they can wait until senior year to really raise their GPA. Come to find out, hey, I'm applying in fall of my senior year. Actually, the only thing on my transcript is what I did in ninth, 10th, and 11th. And 11th grade is the culmination of everything that they've done, right? So it'll be the most difficult math, science, history, English courses. Hopefully, it'll represent an upward trajectory where at junior year, they're really hitting their peak. It's also the year where they take their SATs or ACTs. We recommend that students take that in the spring of their junior year because by that time they will have received all of the mathematics training that they require to take the SATs, and they'll be the most ready for the English section as well. And then junior year is also where you start really getting heavy into the college research. So students are going to get super comfortable with score. They're going to start making their list. They're hopefully talking to you guys about, how far can I go? What can we afford? What are my options? Good opportunities for, maybe visiting schools, going to a college fair, using your breaks to, go on a little college tour, campus visit trip. But things like that should be happening throughout junior year. It should be starting to get into the nitty-gritty of things. And then we also meet with students in junior year a lot. We go over what they're going to be expected to do, what we're going to be expected to do, and then we get them ready for what you see on your screen now, which is senior year. So senior year, it starts very quickly. The application season is in fall of senior year. So most students, we want to see an application in by, at the very least, Thanksgiving, if not Christmas. But so that's basically right now, right? So November 1st was a big deadline for a lot of students. That's the big early action deadline for most students. And then from then on it goes to regular decision and rolling decision and so on and so forth. But at that point, you really should have a good idea of where it is you want to apply to and where you want to go.
So we're going to get back now that you have a kind of a broad overview to the nitty gritty of like what we're going to focus on now. NCAA is another one of those things that students can definitely sign up for. If you have a student who's pretty serious about a sport and you think that they're going to go either Division I or II, they do need to create an NCAA account. What they have is a clearinghouse. So basically, the colleges have requirements that are not always connected to different states' graduation requirements. Fortunately, in New Jersey, we actually almost always are in alignment with what the NCAA wants, right? So when a student creates a clearinghouse account, what they're doing is allowing us to submit their transcript to the NCAA, and then they will evaluate that transcript and say, yes, your student is eligible to play sports at the collegiate level, right? There is a fee that's involved with it for families. What happens after you register is that you show up on our portal, and then we are able to send any documentation that they need. This is not always necessary, right? So again, if you're a Division I or Division I Division one or Division two athlete, you're definitely going to need to join the clearinghouse. Some students decide that they want to play at the club level. They may not need to do anything with the clearinghouse, right? But it's good to keep in mind that that's there. They have a couple of sheets that you could utilize just to make sure your students on track. Again, for the most part, I would say 99% of my students are hitting every single requirement that they have just by going through our graduation requirements, right? So that's actually a really nice thing about going to Randolph High School. It takes a lot of the thinking out of being NCAA eligible. So we had a couple of slides just to talk about the different eligibilities. We'll send out a link that actually will take you to a video after this is over, and it will allow you to get a little bit more information on the NCAA clearinghouse.
Mr. Summer, this is going to be shared, right? Somebody just asked if
Yep.
we have a recording and the presentation available after, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we're going to shift to score, and that might be a new word for you. It's definitely a new word for most of your students, if not all of them. They might pronounce it squire, but it definitely is pronounced score. They will have had, if they're a ninth grader, they have an invite sitting in their inbox right now. They may not have opened their email in a long time, if they ever have. If they haven't, just sit down with them, open up their school email, and look for an email from SCORE. Once they open that, there'll be a link to create their account. It'll automatically be linked with our school's SCORE account so that we can all be connected for that. So what SCORE is, it's our college and career discovery tool, and then it's also the tool that we use as counselors to send official documentation on their behalf to schools when they apply to college. We also post a lot of opportunities on there, like college visits, when we have admissions reps coming in, when we have college fairs, instant decision days, things of that nature. So it's very important that they make an account. And when they are older, it's not only important, it is definitely required. So every student has to have one. And then on there, what you'll see on this slide is something called Principals U, and you can find it on SCORE. It's a career discovery tool. It's not perfect. It's basically a 50 question quiz that'll ask them like, hey, do you like to make cabinets? Do you like to conduct business? Like they're very kind of broad questions, and some of them are more specific than others. And it uses certain algorithms, and I don't know what kind of technology is used behind it, but it's pretty spot on for some students. So they'll answer all these questions, and then it'll spit out a bunch of potential matches for careers. And then they can actually click through those careers, see the education requirements, the salary, the day-to-day activities, certain things that are required in terms of like characteristics. So it's cool for them to at least get the conversation started. Sometimes they're a little bit taken aback by what is offered to them, and that's fine. It's not really for them to find their exact match. It's really for them to start the exploration side of it and get their brains working on like, hey, maybe this I could potentially do this, and I didn't know this career made this amount of money. And then, you can have a conversation with them, and they can have a conversation with their aunts, uncles, grandma, grandpa. Hey, what did you do? And then look up that career. So it's always a good time.
So in December, we'll be meeting with the sophomores and we'll be going through this platform, right? The other suggestion that I have is that try to get your students to take the personal finance requirement or any business class, but the personal finance class in general usually has students do a project on cost of living. So what I mean by that is that they'll actually pick a career and then talk about what they want in the future and do a little bit of work to see like how does that all pan out, right? In that, they'll be utilizing different tools, not just SCORE, but they can also use things like the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. They have similar things. I'll add a link to that when we send out the information. But that's the idea for 10th grade. We really want the students to start to understand that education is going to be connected to a career. So if they know what they want to be or they have some ideas of what they want to be, they can start to pinpoint, well, what do I have to do after high school or even in high school to kind of get those things, right? I'll just use an example. We'll have students sometimes that come in and say, well, I don't really like math, but I want to be an engineer. And we can take a look at that and say, okay, well, if you want to be an engineer, there are a lot of math things that we have to do, right? So maybe we could get some extra help if it's not our most favorite piece of our academic day. But I think that that becomes important. With this generation, it seems like they really need to understand the relevance to what they're doing, right? So it's not just because I told you so. I need you to do this thing because this is what's required of you if you want to join this career. And I think it helps people to push through sometimes things that they necessarily don't want to do, right? And for this generation, I think that that relevancy is very important. So this score is going to help us to do that. The personality and career interest inventories is all part of that. If you look at research as to job satisfaction, you'll see things where like your personality traits and things that you're good at, like skills that you have. If you combine some of those things along with your core values, sometimes that leads to satisfaction in different careers, right? And the score program, the platform, is going to take some things about personality, interest inventories. It's going to combine them and it's going to spit out, kind of like Mr. E said, through an algorithm, what careers might be linked to a student. Is it 100%? Definitely not. But sometimes it can just start the kids to thinking, which is, to reiterate what Mr. E said, is really what we're trying to do in ninth and 10th grade. Just to go back again on the building a resume, SCORE actually has a place to build a resume. So as students are completing different activities, we suggest that they utilize the tool, even if they're just keeping a running list, because in junior year, they're going to have to fill out what we call the brag sheet. Now, what I'm going to say about the brag sheet is sometimes students are doing something every day that they don't find remarkable, and they have no idea that other people aren't doing it. So for instance, let's say a grandparent lives in the house and they can't necessarily participate in activities because they might have to assist at home with healthcare, or it could be a younger sibling, it could be someone that just needs a little extra help. Those things are important for the counselor to know, and they'll show up on a brag sheet. So anything that your student is doing, any community service, anything extra that they do, if they have a job, if they volunteer places, those are the things that we're talking about tracking and making sure that they wind up on a resume. And later on down the road, it's going to become important when we write a letter of recommendation for your student or when they want to apply for a college. We don't keep track of things like how many hours of community service that they do, but I suggest that you potentially keep track of it, especially if it's a unique experience where they showed some leadership, because someone's going to ask about it when you go to make an application or you have to write an essay or there's a scholarship that comes up. So this is just a view of the resume tool. Again, it's a screenshot, so it can't be really that amazing, but SCORE has a lot of videos. We'll attach a link to their YouTube channel where their videos are, and they walk you through how to utilize some of the tools.
It's not the most sleek resume. There's definitely, better looking ones out there, but really it's more of an organizational tool for the student to keep track of what they're doing. And then we can also access it so we can keep track of what they're doing as well. And then when it comes time for them to do their actual application, they can then take that and import it to a more fancy resume builder if they like, or, it's pretty good to use. Somebody just asked, how students can submit the volunteering hours. It's not something that they really submit to us or anybody for that matter. It's something that they just put on their college application, and really it's on the honor system for the most part. They're not checking logs and signatures and things of that nature. But if they were to ever conduct an audit or ask for further information, you definitely want to have that on hand, because they might. And if they do, you want to have that information.
I'll give a good example. I once had a student that was working with me on an application, and they put something down like that they had 1,000 hours of community service. And so I asked them, that's a lot of hours. How did you get that? And they mentioned that they were a part of youth group. So then I sat down and said, okay, let's actually calculate how often that you meet and talk about, like, did you actually hit that time? If you hit it, great. But if you didn't hit it, let's try to be more realistic about the time, because someone could ask you about it, like Mr. E said, and if they do, you're going to want to be able to kind of like have the proof of that if you needed it. There, it's going to be few and far between. It would have to be that something like I just said. If you said 1,000 hours, people are going to question that. But here or there, they're going to ask you for your volunteer experience. Not many people are going to ask for specific requirements as far as that's concerned, unless it was some type of special program or a scholarship that wanted to make sure that you met a requirement. So And again, scholarships is something you're going to worry about a little bit later down the line, but in order to prepare for them, it's nice to make sure that your students are getting involved in activities that have some community service. So just to go back actually to this slide where we talk about whose job is it anyway, we always try to advocate that our students are doing some of the work for themselves. I know that, again, I'm a parent, Mr. E is a parent now, and we understand that it can be daunting to wait on your student to get the ball rolling, but it is important that they take some of the responsibility. So what we would like to see them doing is getting involved in SCORE. We're going to create opportunities for them to do that freshman and sophomore year. We're going to also allow them to start looking at the college research through those same sessions. That's connecting the careers to schools. SCORE will make recommendations. We meet with the students. We have multiple points of contact each year just to make sure those are planned points of contact, just to make sure that we're actively pursuing the students. And then they are welcome to come seek our counselors out whenever they want. I've had quite a few of your students on my caseload when I was an eighth grade counselor. I still like to go visit with the kids if they want to come down and speak to any of us. We would rather be talking to your children than pushing pencils on a piece of paper, right? So please have them come down and or send a message to their counselor. And then, working on setting some goals. Oftentimes, if you have something that you're working to, it makes the work a little bit easier to do, right? Because it's not fun to fill out applications that won't be fun for your students. And knowing that they're working towards something will make that easier. For the parents, we really like to see some encouragement to guide them. Really, you are the expert in your child. We may know your students from working with them, but at the end of the day, you're the expert. And they have more experience through you, your friends, your neighbors, your family members. That's how they're gaining a lot of experience in what they want to do when they get out into the world. They've seen you at your workspace. They've seen, how that kind of affects family life or what you're able to have, right? So these things are influencing their decisions. And I think it's really important for you to talk to your kids about that. I'll just
Just
give you an example. My dad was a police officer. We talked a lot about that when I was younger. It was an option that I was considering, and I still think it's a great career. But at the end of the day, the one thing that for me was detrimental about that was the schedule. Like I missed seeing my dad sometimes on holidays because he was out doing what he needed to do as a police officer, right? So those things are important to talk about with your students so that they understand the life choices that they're going to make. And
just to
then
expand what Mr. Summer, go ahead, Mr. Summer.
they're definitely going to need help organizing, right? They're going to need help figuring out how to make calendars or how to organize the hours. So a little assistance in nudging them towards using the resume builder or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever you want to track it. Go ahead, Mr. E.
Yeah, I was just going to say to expand on what you were saying, I think it's super important for students to feel like they have agency in the process and that they're the ones directing the process while you're guiding and asking guiding questions. I think once they get the feeling that the whole process is being outsourced to you and that it's out of their hands, they continue to take steps back. And I see that when I talk to students and I will ask them where they're at in the process. And they just say things like, I don't know, my parents are really doing most of it. And that is the type of student that I actually then have to reach out to more often because I know they don't have an active role in the situation. So, you're gonna hit a wall with them most likely where they're just gonna be like, oh, I don't know where I want to go, I don't know what I want to do. But that's where you ask the guiding questions and you ask follow-up questions instead of taking the reins. As a first generation student, I kind of had to find that out the hard way and take a more active role, and I think I was better for it. And then, as I spoke about before, all of your ninth grade students should have an invite in their inbox right now. Once you get on to their account with them, if they go to their profile page, they can invite you as the parent so that you can have your score account. It doesn't have all of the functionalities of a student account, but it's pretty close to it. You can do a bunch of the college research, and then you can actually suggest colleges to your student, and it'll come up on their suggested colleges list. So it's actually a good way for you to keep track of some schools that you've heard about or you've read about, and then you can suggest it to your student. And then, they can sit down with you and talk about their suggestions. So if you know your student has a score account, if you have a 10th grade or 11th grade student, then you can go onto their account right now and invite yourself. Or if it's a ninth grader, they're going to have to accept the invite first, and then they can invite you so that you can have an account. One thing that students and parents love to do on score is to look at something we call the scattergrams. And that is, I think, what has the biggest effect on students because it's a chart with an X and Y axis, and it shows every single Randolph High School student that has applied to a specific school. So if you go up and look for Rutgers in the search tab, and then you look at the scattergram plot of it, you can track every single student that has applied to that school. Obviously, it doesn't have their name. It just has their GPA and their SAT or ACT score, and then it has the outcome, whether they got in, they got waitlisted, they got denied, and it really has a tangible effect because a student can say, "Oh, wow, that's pretty close to my GPA. I actually have a shot getting in."
I think that rolls right into this next slide, and it's something that's being talked about a lot at this conference that I'm at now, is finding a student's fit, right? So if you ever got to see the data from where students apply, most of our students are applying to like the same 30 schools. That doesn't mean that those are always the best schools for the student, right? A lot of them are going to be the Big Ten schools or other popular bumper sticker schools, is sometimes what they're referred to about. And there's a reason why people want to go to those schools, right? They do offer a lot of great opportunities. If they're a big school, they have many, many programs, they have internship opportunities, and that's wonderful. That might not be the best fit for every student. So that's why we think it's really important for you guys to get on with as a family and start looking at different options. The nice thing is when you go in, it's almost to score, it's almost like online shopping. So just like if I wanted to buy a new pair of Nikes and I went on, Amazon, I could select sizes, colors, etc. Score utilizes filters just like that to do a college search. And you can look for things like majors. You can look to see if it's in a large school, a small school, a private school, different types of activities that they have there. It could be in an urban setting, a rural setting. It can also go by distance, right? There's going to be some students that think that they want to go away to California, and maybe they can. And then there's going to be other students that want to do it, but they being able to travel home sometimes in that first year is also important, right? So it's things like that again, you're the expert on your student. You're going to know some of those things that are going to help fit them, and those guiding questions that Mr. E was talking about. This is where they come into play. So it's really about finding the fit, what's right for your student, not what everybody else is doing. It's really going to be their home away from home for a few years. It's also a huge, huge financial commitment, right? And there's ways that we can lighten the load of that. Just to speak about my pathway again, like, going to community college for 2 years, I saved a ton of money. I still finished with a 4-year degree from another institution. But it depends on every family's means and, what students have going on for them as well. So it's important to find your fit there.
And one thing that highlights the importance of that is actually the National Student Clearinghouse has released the data on it. And for the third year in a row, there's been over a 4% increase in the amount of students that are transferring to different colleges. So I think that the data now is about 15% of students are transferring to a different university. And that's grown like 4 or 5% from the year before. And I think that what that tells me is that students aren't finding their fit. They're going to the school that, like Mr. Summers says, has the bumper sticker appeal, or their friends are going, or their parents push them to go in that direction. And then they end up recognizing that it's not for them and then having to transfer. Sometimes the credits don't transfer or they miss time and they have to restart the semester. And it could just be solved from the beginning by actually finding a school that really fits their personality and their learning type.
In saying all those things, I think it's really important that our students still have dreams. What is their why? What pushes them? What makes them want to go further in life? I don't ever want to tell a student, you shouldn't apply to this because it costs XYZ. You have to take into account that there's things out there like financial aid, there's merit-based scholarships, there's work study programs. Myself, I got a job that had tuition reimbursement that helped me pay for school, right? So there's ways to make it to the end of that rainbow, right? And I don't want students to not apply. I want them to dream big and then put in the work that's going to get them to the end of it. It's just also important for them to understand that there's things that there are realities within this, right? So I'm going to bring up the student that didn't like math, but they want to be an engineer. That is a reality that if you are going to be an engineer, math is an important part of that, right? So it's finding that balance. We want to encourage you to dream, and we also want to make sure through those guiding questions that there's a little bit of reality involved in that as well. And then the biggest thing of this is that we all have to learn sometimes what our limitations are and then getting help for that. Just because you have a limitation today doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to overcome that. So if, again, I'll use the student that doesn't necessarily like math, they might decide that they're going to go out and get extra help, utilize that NHS tutor. The next thing you know, their confidence is going way up, and now math is not the thing that's holding them back from the engineering, right? So I think it's really important that, they have that dream. It's almost like a vision. Today they talked about vision boards. I don't think they cut them out of magazines like they did when I was a kid, but students kind of creating that vision for themselves and utilizing that as jet fuel to propel themselves to where they want to be.
So, standardized testing, you might have questions about what is the importance of it anymore. Are a lot of schools going test optional? Are they going test blind? I just went to a Big Ten conference with a ton of schools, the names like Rutgers and Penn State and Michigan and all the others. A lot of them are going back to requiring an SAT score. So for a long time during COVID and after, schools kind of had to adjust and they had to move to test optional. And a lot of schools now are finding that the students that came test optional maybe weren't up to scratch, and they're kind of rolling things back. There's still a ton of schools that are test optional and have made a vow to stay test optional for the foreseeable future. You can actually see which schools are test optional on fairtest.org. It's the website there on the third bullet point. Um, it's a live list that they update very frequently, but the bottom line is every student should at least take the SAT or the ACT at the very least one time. It's not only important for admissions, but it's useful for merit-based scholarships and scholarships that they apply for throughout the year. And a school that they may think right now is test optional may become test required in the future. So it's important that they at least have a score and hopefully one that they're proud of. And so the SAT and the ACT are the two options for standardized testing. They're both equally acceptable. Schools, I don't know of any school that accepts one over the other. I'm pretty sure every school in the country accepts both, and they look at each one equally. The main differences are that the ACT has an optional science section. It's a little bit faster paced. There's a little bit less time per question on the ACT, excuse me. And the ACT can be digital or on paper, while the SAT has moved to complete digital. It's also an adaptive test for the SAT. So on the digital platform, the questions will change based on how they do. So the difficulty will go up if they're answering questions correctly, and it will go down if they're not. So, there's a little bit of a pro and cons thing going on there. So I would encourage you and your students to have a conversation about which one is a better fit. If they're stronger in math, usually they lean towards the SAT. If they're not, they would take the ACT. But really, what I recommend is to do a practice test for each one, and there are free ones on either website. And then they can kind of feel out the test and the timing and what's right for them. Every student will have taken the PSAT this year, so when the scores do come out, you'll get a whole score report and with places for growth and places of strength, and they can pick and choose kind of where they want to study more to cover the bases.
So for this last slide, I just want to frame it in a way that kind of makes sense. Students are going to struggle. Struggle is inevitable. If you are taking rigorous coursework, so whether your student decides later on that they want to try to take an AP course or an honors course and they haven't done so yet, they will struggle. And struggle is okay if you understand how to gain support, right? And it's okay if not every day, you get an A. There is no magic formula for the exact number of AP courses that a student needs to take to get into a school, or how many minutes they need to spend doing community service, or how many clubs to join, or sports, etc. There is no magic formula. What is important is that students are trying to challenge themselves, able to access anything that's available to assist them to get through that challenge, and that they are showing some form of commitment to themselves, to their community, and getting involved, right? The reason for that is twofold. One, because it's good for your kids to understand that at some point they're going to have a struggle. They're going to take some class in college or wherever it is, and it's going to be difficult. And for them to learn that while they have school counselors, teachers, dean of students, all these people that work at Randolph, this is like a really great opportunity to do it. Because when you get to the college level, you're expected, there's less people watching you. You're expected to advocate more for yourself. So there's still support systems there, but it works way differently, right? And the other reason for it really is that colleges really like to see uh, that students are not afraid necessarily to push, right? And the reason for this is that a college is a business, and they are looking for indicators that show that a student is going to make it. The big one is that they were successfully able to complete their degree in 4 or 5 years, right? If you're going to look at colleges and they don't have a very high rate of successful graduation, that's not something that is going to sell you. So when they accept students, they're looking for students that have indicators that say we're going to make it. So a strong GPA, we're going to make it. They took some challenging classes, they're going to make it. They might have exhibited time management skills. What I mean by that is, if I'm taking 4 APs, I also made a good decision to maybe take a study hall, right? Those things are indicators. If they were committed to a club for 4 years and took on a leadership position or whatever it is, those things show that, they're gonna make it through that process at their school. And that's really what they want, right? At the end of the day, college is a business. And so we have to understand that those are the things that they're going to sell themselves on is, hey, we have students that make it out of here in 4 or 5 years, and the new thing that they want to sell is that their students are getting jobs, because that is sort of the point of what we're all doing, is that we want our students to be prepared to enter the workforce and have a great life. So those are the things that they're looking for. And it goes back to the original question about building your resume. That is how you do it. You have all these indicators. You're painting a picture of yourself that shows that you're involved, you're willing to take a chance. And for each student, that's different. Like maybe I started in B level, but as I'm getting up to my junior and senior year, I'm moving towards A level, or it could be A to AP or whatever it is. But like showing that growth is a wonderful indicator, right? And it's a way that you build your resume. So I'm going to finish it out by kind of reiterating that a long time ago, a wise person told me that a transcript is a painting. It's a picture of who you are, right? And I try to tell this to students all the time. Your attendance is on there, your GPA is on there, your resume is the same thing, and you really want to make sure that you're working from day one when you get into school on painting that picture that you would want other people to see. Thank you for using the Q&A. Someone just asked, when do you suggest starting SAT prep? I would say that they're going to take that initial SAT in ninth grade now, and then when you get your scores back, you'll be able to utilize those scores with certain SAT prep organizations so that they know what your student needs to work on. But you could literally start it at any time. I would say 10th grade, after they take that SAT, is a really good time, because or PSAT, sorry, is a good time, because they're going to be working on foundational skills for the SAT ultimately spring of their junior year. We do have an SAT prep class for both math and English at our high school that students can take. There are a couple places in town that offer SAT prep, but there is a ton of free practice online, and I can add the links when I send out the recording and the slide deck as well. The scores should come back from PSATs, I would say usually like 4 to 6 weeks. Don't quote me on that because I'd have to look it up. But it doesn't take that long, especially now that all the exams are digital.
Usually by, I think, early December, I feel like is the timeline for PSAT scores. And then when you're asking when is a good time to start SAT prep, they pretty much already have. So taking the PSAT is the first step. So if you have a ninth grade student and you're wondering when to start SAT prep, you already have. The PSAT is going to be the biggest tool they're going to use from the beginning to identify their weak points, their strengths, and then I mean when they were sitting in the room actually taking the test, that's also a big one, right? So it's checking in with themselves. Like, was I good on time? Was I anxious? Was I doing the best that I possibly could? And if not, what are some ways to improve not only my knowledge, but my test taking ability, which I think is equally important? Is there anything like a pre-ACT out there? Not one that is given on a wide scale like the PSAT, but there are practice ACT tests that you can take on the ACT.org website.
The practice tests have gotten a lot better as technology's been implemented because students can take them on their platform and even get like scores back. So or be able to sort of go over where they're at. We utilize Blue Book. That's an app from the SAT. And the nice thing about that is once our students have logged into that, they can go in and continue to utilize the practice test from that platform. And it's the same exact platform that they used for testing. So that's actually quite nice. There is no limit to how many times that a student can take an SAT, but I would tell you that I think that it becomes detrimental to take it too many times, um, more like psychologically, to be honest. So our students are already taking a ton of tests. I think that there is a good number to take. I always suggest that they take it more than once, because they can often see improvement in an area. But I have students that have taken it like 6 times. Three seems to be a very popular number, and if they're not really improving after that, they'd have to do some serious prep work to make advancements, I think. So the students choose what scores they're going to send. Um, that is a really great question, and it's one that's going to get answered again junior year. But you do not have to send all of your scores. You choose what you want to send from the College Board, so that's who runs the SAT, or from the ACT. You actually physically tell them send these scores to these different institutions. There are different games that people play with that. Some schools do what they call super scoring. So if you scored higher in math on one and English on the other, they may combine both of those scores in order for you to get like a what they call a super score. So basically like the highest of both. But yeah, you don't have to send them all. It does cost money to send your scores though, so um, it's important to think about what you're going to send.
Any other questions out there about the applications process, the prep process, anything we can address?
All right, we are always available um, via email or give us a call. Send your student down. Again, I've had many of your students. I still love seeing them. I go bother them during the lunch block sometimes. Um, but we're always available for consult, and we look forward to continuing our work with them. Again, in December, we're going to push in with the sophomores to start the career interest inventory. Our counselors met with freshmen to do like an interest inventory and get to know them. We're planning on doing something else later on in the spring. We're going to have a new college and career counselor who will be joining us shortly. And we have a lot of things planned for the different grade levels. So it looks like one final thing popped up. Is there a separate college planning night for juniors? Yes, there is. So in the spring, they will have a junior college planning night, and that will really dig more into the application process. So you can look forward to that coming out in the spring. And then we do another one for seniors, and that is in fall of senior year. So that'll be for senior parents. So it'll be a senior parent night. And both of those touch on similar aspects, but it has to do with the timing. Again, junior year, we really want your kids finishing up their exploration and making a list of like 10 or 15 colleges that they're thinking about applying to. And then when they come back in the fall, they really need to hammer away on those applications. So I hope that you all enjoyed this presentation. We will send out the recording. We will send out a link to the slides along with other supplemental material. I thank you for joining us. And I hope that the virtual